Hello, this is Tom and Chris. We're those film guys, and welcome to our review of Skyfall, which has just come out in the cinema and is the 20. I forget which
23rd?
number Bond this is.
I think it's the 23rd.
23rd, right. Yeah, the 23rd Bond, starring Daniel Craig and directed by Sam Mendes. So, before we get started into Skyfall itself, I think we should get going on previous Bonds, or Bond in general, or more specifically Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace.
Yep.
So, what did you, to start off with, what are your thoughts on Bond? And
Well, I think it's safe to say I've never really been a Bond fan. I've never properly sat down and watched any of the old ones. It's just never really appealed to me. The only two I can say that I've watched from beginning to end are the latest three, including Skyfall, with Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. I actually quite like Casino Royale. Daniel Craig's never been my favourite Bond. In fact, I think he's one of the weakest points of the recent series. But yeah, for what Casino Royale was, I really enjoyed it. Quantum of Solace, however, I just hate everything about that film. I think it heavily detracted from how good Casino was, and it was just a mess. I think the production suffered a lot in that. So how about you, Tom? I know you're a big Bond fan.
I do like Bond. I like the character of Bond, the essence of what Bond is, and the style that they go for in previous films. My favourite one has to be, I think, Pierce Brosnan, because he blended that sort of. He was really sophisticated, which I did really enjoy. And he was in one of my favourite Bond films, Tomorrow Never Dies. But with Casino Royale, I think it was probably it was that reinvention, or that it was a new take on the formula we've seen. I believe,
Yeah.
and
To me, it almost seems like a reboot. I know, obviously, some would argue it isn't, but from just the tone of it and how it establishes the new take on it, it almost seems like a reboot to me.
yeah, and it just showed it was 2 hour, almost 2.5 hours long, and you know it had some great production, some good set pieces, and I think probably one of the most memorable opening sequences, or one of the first opening action scenes.
The crane.
Yeah, the crane scene.
Is it? Yeah.
Which I think was probably one of the best in recently with Bond.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, I really do. I really like Daniel Craig as James Bond. I think he has that sort of raw talent, raw edge that Bond, I think, was missing previously. Quantum of Solace, I'm the same as you. That film was atrocious and appalling. It really was an atrocious piece of work, from beginning to end, a mess, a complete mess of action after action. It felt like a Bourne movie. It felt like a like the Bourne, a continuation of Bourne instead of James Bond.
I've heard that from a lot of Bond fans. Actually, I haven't particularly heard anyone praise Quantum of Solace who I've spoke to.
What it had was far too much action, far too much action, and
I would say it didn't have enough action.
I thought that you started action, then you get a little bit of exposition, then more action, and it just felt like the pacing was so off.
Oh yeah, it was.
But yeah, that's what I think of Quantum of Solace.
And then after Quantum of Solace, I'm not sure whether the studio went bust or whether there was some discrepancies there, because the Bond series kind of went on hiatus for
Yeah,
I don't know how long it was, good few years.
MGN was did or was my I don't know whether this is correct or not, but I'll just say them both anyway. But yeah, the MGN was or went bank or on the was on the verge, or they went bankrupt.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, I think that is essentially what happened, and that was put on hiatus. But now we've got Skyfall, which seemed like it would have so much potential to be that sort of reinvention we needed after Quantum of Solace. That sort of what the Bond we wanted to see after Casino Royale. That's what I think it was gearing up to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, what did you think of?
Did we get
Skyfall overall?
It was okay. It by far better than Quantum of Solace, but then again, that's not saying much. I didn't enjoy it nowhere near as much as I did Casino. I thought in parts it was very slow. As a film, it shot perfectly. There were a lot of nice set pieces there. But I think where it fell down was in the characters, especially the villain, but we'll get into that later. And the plot just seemed to meander. It didn't seem to have a clear focus what it wanted to get out of the story. There were a lot of elements, especially towards the end of the film, that kind of didn't gel for me. Daniel Craig, I'm still not a fan from this film. But it's difficult for me because I'm not inherently a huge Bond fan, so
yeah,
that's all I can really say about it. Really, what do you think? You'll probably be able to say it better.
I've had some time to think about it, and I my reaction now is I liked it, but I didn't. I thought there was much to be desired in terms of the story and the plot and characters and things like that. My overall feeling was that it felt like a film. It felt like a prelude, like a you know, with how the first X-Men film, or like the first X-Men film was, where it seemed like a film that was gearing up for something better. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah. So you think Bond 24 will be something big, and this is kind of setting up?
It felt like setup, that more than anything else.
Yeah, it does introduce a lot of new characters and a lot of new elements that haven't been included in Casino and Quantum. For example, you get introduced to Q.
Yeah.
And there's just genuinely a lot of other characters around the kind of MI6.
Yes, MI6, yeah.
Group, such as Ralph Fiennes, who's introduced. And yeah, I can see where you're coming from. That it does seem kind of like a set-up Bond film.
Though I thought that the film looked absolutely fantastic, and that's a testament to Roger Deakins, probably one of the best cinematographers around, where he who shot or was director of photography on one of my favourite films, The Shawshank Redemption, and various other stuff as well. He worked on, I think it was Road to Perdition and stuff like that. So he knows what a film should look like, or he knows how he wants the film to look cinematic, which it was. It was very cinematic.
Yeah, I agree. The film looked fantastic, especially in the.
It was just the villain and that sort of stuff, and all the plot elements in it that just didn't really work, I don't think. And like I said, it seemed like it was gearing up for something better.
Yeah, and you know, when this film started off, I actually did think, well, we'll go into spoilers later, but there's an action scene at the start which I actually thought was pretty well done. It was perfectly shot, and I did think we were going to get that reinvention that we just spoke of after Casino, but it's just when the film kind of continues, we get a lot of exposition, and it just seems to move from set piece to set piece without much cohesion.
Yeah.
But as you said, the film looks fantastic. I mean, the whole Singapore sequence in the middle of the film, that looked great. And there's like a kind of neon building that Bond goes into, and that just looked. I was genuinely like taken aback at how well the film was shot at that point.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, great cinematography didn't save the film for
No,
me.
me neither. So shall we get into it?
Yeah, let's get right into it.
Right, and we begin where I think the film should begin. The Bond theme,
Yes.
which was done by Adele, and probably this is one of the better themes I've heard from Bond. I mean, there have been some terrible, awful Bond themes, but this theme I think is probably one of the best. I think it really captures what they were trying to go for.
Yeah, absolutely. It just from like the chord pattern and everything, it just captures the essence of what Bond is. And we were speaking a bit before we started recording this review, and you were saying that almost from the lyrics, you thought that this was going to be the last Bond film or gearing up for something.
I sort of said, well, because I mean it's pretty obvious that they want to keep this going, but I sort of thought, had the mindset that through the lyrics, this is the end in the Adele song, that I thought this was going to be like, are they going to just surprise the audience and just go, this is it, this is Bond is over after this. That for a moment that was what I thought.
No, they'll keep the Bond films coming.
Yeah.
You just know they will. But honestly, and this is going to sound really horrible of me, but that opening title sequence with the theme song, that was probably my favourite bit of the film. I thought that the imagery and the song together was in the classic kind of Bond fashion, like the very wavy kind of almost water-like, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean. That each Bond film kind of has that. I think that looked fantastic, and as I said before, the theme song comes on, we get given this big action sequence where there's a car chase, there's a chase on foot, there's riding motorbikes over rooftops, and then we get a fight on top of a train. It's really everything you want from a Bond film.
Well, I mean, it's certainly better than what we got at the beginning of Quantum of Solace.
Oh god, yeah.
What they did in Quantum of Solace was just atrocious, and that theme was atrocious as well.
Yeah, just everything about that film. But yeah, and so what happens at the end of that? Bond's trying to get a hard drive back that has been stolen.
And the plot sort of centres around that hard drive where it's got the names of all agents embedded in terrorist organisations across the globe. I think is the quote from Ralph Fiennes, and they lost it to to someone from M's past, who comes back to haunt her, and that's sort of the plot where they have to find this guy, and they have to figure out who he is and what he's been planning, why he wants to frighten M, why he wants M to begin with, and that's really what Bond and everybody else is trying to figure out, and that's sort of the plot of the film. It's quite simple at heart.
And at the end of that action sequence, Bond is accidentally shot in a call that M makes. They're trying to shoot the terrorist who's taken this hard drive, but it's not a clean shot. But M gives the command to take the shot anyway, and Bond is hit. And then that kind of leads us into the first part of the film, which I personally think this could have been a film even in itself. Bond kind of goes into retirement for, like, we're not exactly given how long he's been gone away. I don't know if it's a good few months. And it's kind of like it's kind of like a Dark Knight Rises plot line. He's trying to get back into the swing of things and trying to get back to how he used to be in terms of a secret agent.
I think what they tried to do with M, with M's character, they're trying to make her sort of like as if she's sort of losing touch with how the operation should be run, and sort of making decisions that would be sort of questionable. Like in the opening, she says, "Take the shot" to Moneypenny, to Eve.
Yeah,
Sorry, Well, later on it's revealed it's Moneypenny,
Eve
but
Moneypenny.
she
Yeah.
says, "Take the shot." She makes a call which is questionable at best, to sort of shoot the terrorist. But as you said, it's not clean shot, and Bond gets hit. So really, it's she's sort of they're trying to give the sense that she's losing touch, which I thought was actually
Yeah.
quite a good idea.
Yeah, that plot line was really good. She seems like she's kind of from this old line of
Yeah,
espionage, like from an older time, and it's kind of moving into a new territory. MI6 is moving into a new way of dealing with things, and her style doesn't really gel with the way things are moving forward. So really, the film kind of centers around M trying to kind of clear her name and kind of restore order to MI6, and just clear her name and get her name high up in authority again. And then Bond has to kind of, what happens then? Bond is sent
yeah,
on this mission to try and, is it still to try and bring back the hard drive, or
yeah. Well, he's to still try and bring back the hard drive, find out who this terrorist is working for, and stuff like that. Who hired him and things like
yeah,
that. Which leads him to Shanghai, where he has that fantastic sort of chase, sort of follows the guy through the building with sort of glass everywhere, and the doors that he has to open, and sort of he has to elude this guy
you've got
who's
the
trying
neon
to
lights
shoot
as
someone,
well.
but we don't really know who that someone is, and I just think it's some random person.
It was the guy from the train at the start who
Yeah.
had got the hard drive, so he was just kind of after him,
Yeah.
really. But yeah, as we said at the start, that part looked fantastic with the glass, and then you had the neon reflection from the building. But to me, I kind of fell out the loop of the film there, because the guy who Bond's chasing is also trying to assassinate this other guy who we're not really introduced to. Was that? I didn't really understand that part, because you had the Bond girl there, if you can call her the
Yeah.
Bond girl. So she was kind of in league with the villain as well.
Yeah. Who they're trying to assassinate, I don't know. But that's not really cleared up, and that's not really talked about who that was. I think they
No.
mention it in passing later on, but it's never really centered on who it actually is he was trying to kill. But
No.
but to be
forgive
honest,
me
I
if
don't think personally I don't think that really matters, because I don't think it distracts from
No.
the actual plot.
No, and then after that, Bond kind of has talks to the Bond girl. Forgive me, I forgot her name. It's been a few days since I saw the film, but he asks for an audience with the villain, who I know his code name is Silver, but for the life of me, I cannot remember the name they give him in the film, played by Javier Bardem.
Yeah.
So she kind of escorts Bond for a meeting with him, and we get our first look at the villain. So, Tom, what did you think of Javier Bardem's character?
Right. Right. The villain, like I don't know. I go on appearances. Looks alone, he looks ridiculous. That stupid blonde.
Yeah, that was the scariest thing about the villain.
Stupid blonde wig of his. And to be honest, I think he's too campy for the serious tone they were trying to go for. Is what mainly I think.
I agree. Yeah, and that was the scariest thing about him, was that hair. When he entered that room with that bright platinum blonde wig of his, I was, Jesus Christ. But yeah, I absolutely agree. He walks in and he gives this kind of villain speech about kind of living in a dog-eat-dog world he talks about like this rat, and he got all these rats together and they all ate each other, and then he released the two surviving ones back into the wild. He gives kind of this analogy on them kind of both being Bond agents, and I thought that was brilliant. But then straight after that, we're given a completely different tone where he's kind of groping and caressing James Bond as he's tied to this chair. And I remember just thinking, like, okay, like, I didn't get the tone they were trying to go with the character. I didn't know whether they wanted to be kind of campy with him and kind of go for a humorous villain. But then in other times when he's captured and we learn a bit more about his backstory, he has this tragic backstory that he was taken prisoner for 5 months and tortured. It's just a different tone, and it didn't gel with the character, and he just comes out as kind of like a jumbled mess.
Yeah, and I think the tragic backstory where he was tortured for 5 months to protect MI6 secrets, and it was essentially M who made another questionable decision to basically give this agent up. In return, she got she basically got 5 or 6 agents that were also taken prisoner. Which I think deals with the whole idea of M losing touch with how things are run, or how she's expected to run the agency. But yeah, the one bit I was freaked out by, where he takes because he said in his little speech, where he faces M for the first time, where he looks M for the first time. He says he had a cyanide capsule, but he didn't die from the cyanide capsule, a hydrogen cyanide capsule. And what that did was completely burn his teeth. So he takes out a pair of false teeth, which has a metal plate on it, which holds part of his face up.
Yeah, it's like destroyed the muscles inside his face as well, and like one side of his face just like sags with like all this burn, disfigured skin and just dissolved teeth, and I was like, oh Jesus.
Yeah. which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen that more, actually. I was expecting that to come up again in like the final fight with Bond. Like Bond would punch his teeth out and we'd be fighting this like disfigured, scarred villain. But it never really came up again.
But also you then get... But essentially what it does is it does its jumping around of different locations. Like you go to Shanghai and it does all the exotic stuff first. It gets that out of the way first, so then it can focus more on Britain and being centred in London and stuff like that.
And then the whole film kind of jumps to, I almost want to say a Dark Knight plot line where they've captured the villain, but through various means of connivance he is released, but he wanted to be caught. And he wanted to cause chaos with MI6 because the villain's motive is basically a revenge plot against M. So that's where the film kind of leads then from the second to third act is Javier Bardem's character trying to... Well, he has multiple opportunities to do this. It is to kill M personally, and Bond is kind of sent out to protect M as well as MI6. And you also have like a kind of a court case with M, where she is being tried for, well, I guess she's retired. Kind of try and force her hand to retire. So was the court case for shooting at Bond? I can't remember.
It was the whole thing.
The whole Bond operation.
The sort of age thing, young versus new, where she gave up the hard drive, or she lost the hard drive. That's really what they were taught, and jeopardized security.
Oh yeah.
MI6 security and stuff like that. That's really what it was about.
And they're also saying that should the entire Bond operation be closed down, is there really any need for it anymore? And I thought that element was quite good, because really I almost want to say that M is a bigger character in this than Bond himself.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I think that it is trying to focus more on M because of something that happens later on,
Yeah,
which we'll get into.
which you could argue is really the only
what
reason.
What we also forgot was Oh no, actually, did we remind people about spoilers?
Yeah, yeah. The
Okay.
start, they know we're going to spoilers. I'll put a warning in the video anyway, so to let people know.
Okay. But yeah, it's more M's story than Bond's story, I think.
Hmm.
So, this court case gets shot up by Silver, Javier Bardem's character, and they have an opportunity to kill M, but they don't succeed because Ralph Fiennes gets shot in the arm protecting M, and Bond comes in and shoots everybody, or shoots a couple of people, and then.
Which also begs the question of how a fully armed group of terrorists managed to just walk straight into a courtroom which had basically every single member of MI6 and the superior authorities of MI6 in one room, and just went in and shot everyone up. Like, the security in that place was just terrible.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was an aside. Carry on with what you were saying. I apologise.
I sort of forgot to mention as well. I like the addition of Q and Ben.
Oh yeah, that
Whishaw
was
as
great.
Q, and that sort of repeats that sort of young versus old motif that is going throughout the film.
He's a very different representation of what we've seen of Q before, but he does have a great line in there where he's handing Bond over the gadgets towards the start of the film, and he hands him a gun which is only sensitive to Bond's own palm, so no one else can use the gun, and he gives him a remote radio as well for like a distress signal, and he has a great line where he's saying, "We don't make any kind of exploding pens anymore." Which I think I picked up on the reference.
Was actually, which is quite funny, and it does throw back to those sorts of Tomorrow Never Dies and all the other previous Bond films, which had all the elaborate gadgets.
Yeah, and speaking of elaborate gadgets, it does kind of move into that territory a little bit before the end, where Bond gets a car and it has machine guns in the headlights. Yeah,
that was the Aston Martin DB5, one of the original Bond cars, where it had where they kitted it out with rockets and machine guns and the like, and an ejector seat, and I found that quite funny, quite humorous.
Yeah, I enjoyed that because you didn't really get anything like that in Casino Royale or Quantum of Solace, not like from the gadget perspective. So I thought it's still kind of, I don't want to say realistic, but it still kind of kept it grounded to this new tone.
Yeah,
but it just kind of delved into the old style.
M has a good line as well, where she's getting escorted by Bond. They changed cars to this DB5, and and she has a line where she's sort of being the backseat driver or being telling Bond what to do, and he opens up a flap on the gearbox, and she has a great line where she says, "Go on then, eject me. I won't care."
In typical M fashion. Yeah, you know, Dame Judi Dench was great in this film.
Yeah.
Well, you don't expect anything less from her, really, but certainly in this film, definitely got more screen time. And every scene she was in, she was just nailed that.
Yeah. But then they sort of tell Q to lay a trail for Silver to follow up to Scotland, where Bond, and they go into this whole sort of Bond backstory about his parents and things like that, which was referenced in particular with Daniel Craig's character, or Daniel Craig's rendition of Bond with in Casino Royale on the train.
Yeah.
That was referenced there. Then it goes into this sort of they hold out in a house
in Scotland.
in Scotland, waiting for Silver to arrive.
And that's what Skyfall is. Skyfall was the name of the house that Bond grew up in as a kid with his parents. And we see Albert Finney, who is kind of the groundskeeper of the house. And I really liked Albert Finney's character in this. It kind of added a little levity to the plot, I guess. He was a bit of a comic relief,
Yeah,
but not in a overly annoying way. He still had a character.
yeah, I can't. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
So yeah, the kind of hold up in the house, and they kind of board up the whole house because they're waiting for Silver's arrival. But one thing, and you said this, the whole trail that Q sets for Silver isn't really followed up on. Like, I was expecting to see Silver kind of go from breadcrumb to breadcrumb as he's following this trail up to Scotland.
Yeah,
But we never really saw that.
yeah, I know. Yeah, it doesn't really. The whole thing doesn't really gel. I don't think. That sort of end scene. That's when it sort of becomes you sort of think, well, okay, what's going on? You know, you got the whole thing about Bond's past, and the whole thing. The trail was you know, you wanted to see Silver follow the trail. But yeah, the whole thing with Bond's past, it just felt like a tack on afterthought, and it didn't gel properly.
No, I know what you mean, and I actually came out of this film kind of pleased that they had attempted to try and create something more, some sort of character out of Bond, because let's face it, Bond isn't a character, he's an idea. You know, he's the fast cars, he's the gadgets, he's the bongo, he's that image. Yeah. And that's why it's shown from, you can have Bond as any number of actors, but he will remain the same character because it's the ideal. But I did like that they tried to establish some kind of past to Bond, but as you said, it only comes up in like the final act, and when there's no build up to it, it just didn't work in the plot. It almost needed to be entirely devoted to the plot if that is the route they were trying to take.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of tacked on at the end. I will agree with you there.
And I don't really. It's sort of. And whilst it still looks great, that the ending sort of did leave a lot to be desired. I do believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know really what else I can say about that ending, apart from that bit in the church.
Oh. Well, just before that, Silver shows up and he basically firebombs the house, and M and I can't remember what his name was, the Albert Finney's character. They escape through an underground passage that leads them out onto the Scottish moors. So they're out of the house, and Bond kind of like stays in typical Bond fashion, and is like kind of shooting back at Silver, and then he goes on the run as well. Now Silver corners him on a kind of icy lake. It's all frozen over, and Bond basically shoots the ice, falls through with a henchman, takes out the henchman under the ice, which would have given him hypothermia.
Well,
he would have been absolutely freezing.
Well, I mean, from purely action standpoint, I did like that fight in the lake, and how Bond escapes, and the whole lighting of that scene when he's underwater, when you see him fall through the ice, from the underwater perspective, and all the orange glow where you can see the fire, I thought was really, really good. But from an action standpoint, I did like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The film looked great, but I don't want to say realistic again, but this series does seem like it's trying to be a little more realistic, and from that, with Bond falling through an icy lake and coming out. He's not shivering. He's not cold. He doesn't seem like he's even affected by it. And that just didn't ring true for me. And of course, the villain resorts to the typical cliche of assuming that the hero is dead. And when Bond falls through the icy lake, Silver just kind of looks and goes, "Yeah, he must be dead."
But would you? But I would argue that he's too preoccupied with M to really give a crap about if Bond is dead or not.
No, but from a villain perspective, you'd think he would have made damn sure that his opposition was completely wiped out. So all that he could have done was just stand at the side of the river for like 5 minutes to see if Bond comes out, and if not, then he could carry on. You know, it was literally a matter of seconds before Bond resurfaced from the lake. But anyway, he doesn't, and Silver walks off to confront M. And M was already wounded from when the house was being firebombed, so she's losing strength by the minute, really. And Silver corners her, and he puts the gun to M's head and puts his head at the side of hers, so they would both be killed at the same time.
Yeah.
And then this final confrontation between Bond and Silver was just... It was almost comical, really, because Bond just kind of throws a knife at Silver, and Silver takes a good 10 paces, falls to his knees, and there are no final words or exchange of dialogue, and then he just face plants against the floor.
No, I think that it was I'm actually thinking about it now. I think it was a rather fitting end to Silver, mainly because you hear Albert Finney when they're sort of gearing up for Silver's arrival at the house. He puts down a knife at the table and says, "Sometimes the old ways are the best."
And you just knew from that scene that the knife would come back into the final confrontation somehow in a prominent way.
So I think it's a rather fitting end to Silver that he was killed in an old-fashioned way, because then it reiterates the idea of sometimes the old ways are the best, and that you need to learn from the old to sort of carry on the new, that sort of thing, that sort of motif they're going for.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I do think it is a fitting. So I do think it is a fitting death. To be honest,
it's a fitting way to kill him, I guess. And I don't mean that the villain had to monologue for like 10 minutes, but I would have just liked some kind of closure to his character, and maybe an exchange to show that he and Bond are the same, or anything like that, and then kill him. I just thought it was hastily done for my taste, but that's just me. And then, well, we say a farewell to a character that has lasted, what did we say, 7 films?
7 films.
7 Bond films. And M is killed at the end. So, what did you feel about that?
Yep. Dead as a doornail.
Yep. Couldn't have got any more deader. So, what did you think about that? That, to me, took me by surprise, because I didn't see that happening going into the film.
I thought that ending was... No, I didn't. I wasn't. I was surprised by it, but I also think that it was a rather good end to the old style, or the old way they were going about Bond, and I must admit I did like it. I did really like that the Judi Dench sort of her death, M's death.
But I didn't know going in if the writers had just decided to kill her character off, or if she wanted to just leave the Bond series. I'm not sure the background on it, but I didn't see it coming, and I will agree, it was a very good send-off for the character. And that, to be honest, is why they made her arguably the main character of the entire film, to have a bigger emotional impact for the ending.
Yeah.
However, at the ending, I don't think they gave enough closure to her death as I would have liked. I would have perhaps liked a funeral scene or a few words about her. She just kind of dies in Bond's arms, and then it cuts to a while after the fact where Moneypenny gives Bond a gift that M left him in her will. I think that extra scene after her death might have just given her a full send-off.
But and then we get sort of introduction of the old way in which Bond was styled, you sort of get Moneypenny. You sort of get introduced to Moneypenny for the first time. Well, for the sort of second time, but in a new way. You also then get M, a new M with Ralph Fiennes. Ralph Fiennes as M. With his character called Mallory, or sort of that's his last name. And I thought talking about it now, I am inclined to change my opinion.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you came out of this film quite deflated and uninspired. Same as me, I mean, we both went to see this film together.
Talking about it has made me now think that it's... that I rather liked it.
To be fair, you did say when we came out of the cinema that you'd have to see it a second time to really collate your thoughts. Because you were unsure about it.
Yeah. But no, I do really like it, actually.
Oh, we'll give our final thoughts on it in a minute, but just going back to what you said about the introduction of Moneypenny for the second time, me being completely ignorant to the Bond series, was she an established character from the old ones then?
Yes, she was.
Because the name did ring a bell when she said it, but I couldn't remember if this was a new character for the series or if she was an old character.
No, she was an old character, and the office setup, exactly the same as the old ones.
So therefore, it must be a reboot if they've introduced a character in this way, or is that another code name?
I don't know, to be honest, but it's oh well.
I don't know. It is what it is. That's the film. The new M, Ralph Fiennes, kind of sends Bond on another mission, and then it cuts to the James Bond theme, and that is Skyfall, and with the message in the credits, Bond will return. So I guess we'll move into our final thoughts now. I'll just start with mine very quickly. It was what it was. It was okay. I'm not a huge Bond fan, so I couldn't appreciate some of the things as say, a hardcore Bond fan. The action, for what there was very good. It was well shot. The cinematography was fantastic. The acting, especially from Judi Dench and Ralph Fiennes, really stood out for me. The failings of the film was really the story kind of took on too many elements, and it kind of got muddled, and it just meandered from location to location. The action was okay, apart from a CGI fest where they fight CGI Komodo dragons in Singapore. That was just ridiculous. But I appreciate that it tried to make Bond into a character rather than an ideal, and I liked what they did with M's character, and I thought it was a good send-off for her. So, yeah, I'd give it just above average, I guess.
Yeah. Having collated my thoughts and feelings on through this discussion, I think I've now changed my opinion on thinking it was okay, if not forgettable, to being rather good. Actually, I did rather like it. The ideas of the old versus new. The ideas of that sort of, I like the look, the style, the action. I liked Daniel Craig. Judi Dench was fantastic in it, but I still think the villain is lacking a little bit, and the campiness doesn't really translate well with the serious tone they were going for. But other than that, I do really like it.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. I guess we've talked as much about Skyfall as we can. I don't think there's anything else we have to add.
No, there isn't really much else we can say about it. So, yeah, I think that's Skyfall. Thanks for watching our review of Skyfall, and we hope to see you next time. And please rate, comment, and subscribe to our channel as per usual. And we hope hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you, and thank God we didn't have to do a Bond marathon before this one.